Are you like us? Tired of all the politically correct horseshit on podcasts and in the media? Need a podcast that's funny, smart, and gassy? It's not politically correct. It's just correct. This is the Carolina Underground. Throw that middle finger in the air. Raise them up. Because it's time to get loud, proud, and in your face. Generation X. Generation X. The best generation of all time meets the grit of the South. It's about everything and nothing at all. From current events to woolly boogers to movies to politics. Loud, brash, funny, and never, and I do mean never, predictable. The Carolina Underground with Mark and Mike.
Yo, 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 yo. Welcome back to the Carolina Underground, coming to you live from the replica Bat Cave with my partner in high crimes and misdemeanors somewhere in the deep, dark, haunted depths of Sparkleberry.
You know, every time you do the intro, Spartanburg sounds worse.
Well, we got to have that creative license to make it suspenseful.
Well, that's true.
Whatnot.
I reckon so. How are you this evening, good sir?
Well, I'm hanging in there. I did doing out yard work outside today, so I'm about half dead.
Well, good on you, I reckon.
Well, one thing I noticed, though, you know, them people over in France, I don't know whether they're just stupid or French.
Well, a little both, I suspect. But, you know, I mean, again, well, of course, you know that they're now claiming, as they always do, that, oh, no, we didn't mean that. You know, just
well, it looked an awful lot like it to me.
Well, yeah, but again, that's the thing. It's why it is that there is still anybody out there in the world that does not recognize that the media is not on the side of the citizenry of any place anymore.
They're not.
And they're only there. I mean, because it's the constant. You've got more money in your pocket than you've ever had before. Well, no, I don't, because I can look in my wallet.
Well, actually, I do, but I have to spend more than I've ever spent before to pay for the stuff that I didn't have to pay nowhere near as much for before.
Yeah, exactly. Again.
But here's my take on this. I got something about them French people. And if you listening in France, I'm sorry. The English don't like you, and I don't like you either.
Well, there's a group, a punk rock group, hardcore punk, that I actually used to listen to a long time ago called the Meat Men. And
oh my,
they had a one of their big songs was
that's
called,
kind of a homoerotic title there.
Well, it could be, but yeah, their one of their top tracks was French People Suck.
Well, I mean, it's like y'all didn't make any planning for Hitler in World War II and got the rest of us sucked in a battle because you all got your asses whooped.
Well, yeah. Well, they did. I think France kind of got their belly full of war in World War One. You know, I mean, again, the atrocities of World War One were pretty incredible.
Oh, they were, well, right. I'm not discounting that one bit, but I will say this: World War One actually probably spawned more great literature than the Western world has ever seen.
Yeah, that's one of the strange things about humanity is that we seem to tend to do our best work under tremendous duress.
Right.
You know,
hey, even in World War II, the beginning pages of Catcher in the Rye stormed the beaches of Normandy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because J.D. Salinger had it in his breast pocket when he hit the beach.
Yeah. But, you know, Yeah.
But I was
It's
gonna
just,
say, they
no,
said
go ahead.
them fellers in them. I just thought it was a bunch of fat chicks to start with. Okay.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, maybe them European girls, they eat a little bit too much. Maybe it's just how they look. But then I realized they had facial hair.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what in the hell are these people doing? And they
Well,
come in and say, doing their little sashaying around. I heard somebody say, well, we were doing the Festival of Dionysus or something like that. And I was like,
yeah.
well, you're going to have to do a damn bit bigger lie than that, because I can tell what the imagery you were doing there at the end around the table was, because that's one of the most famous paintings
Mhm.
in the world.
Right. But again, that's the whole thing is they do something offensive and then they spend, the media goes into this tailspin of, oh, no, 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 don't believe your lying eyes. This is what it was really,
Well, they
meant to
can't
be.
even afford to give the people dad blame air conditioning, and they sleeping on cardboard beds.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
I'm
It's
gonna
just
tell you one
absurdity.
thing though, they better be glad I wasn't the president of the United States. Because
Yeah.
if I had been president of the United States and I had watched that garbage, they wouldn't never one of our athletes participated, and we would have pulled out, and we wouldn't never give them another dime, and I would have made sure their asses got kicked out of NATO the next
Well,
morning.
here's my question. Why in the hell are we giving money to foreign countries in the first bloody place?
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. It's one of them politic things that when you kind of dive down that rabbit hole, you don't ever seem to come back out of.
well, and it's the truth. And again, I mean, and I said it in a conversation I had today. There's not a war between straights and queers. There's not a war between men and women. There's not a war between the different races, black or white or Asian. The only war that exists and has always existed is the war between the people who just want to live their lives and be left alone, and the people who refuse under any circumstances to allow them to live their lives. And
Pretty
that's the
much.
whole beauty, the beauty of the founding fathers and the philosophy of, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator, not by their government, not by the people who have money, but by their creator, with
Right.
certain
Which
inalienable rights.
supersedes the authority and representation of the United States government.
No, it supersedes all of the governments.
Right.
And those rights, are the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to the pursuit of happiness.
Well, I know one thing. My pursuit of happiness is being infringed upon.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Between Friday night and this morning, I bet I have gotten 50 text messages telling me how great Kamala Harris is.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's obvious on its
And the
face,
next one
right?
that I get, I think I'm going to file a class action lawsuit against the Harris campaign.
Well, you should be able to, honestly, because the fact of the matter is
But I will
this.
say this. Wait a minute. Before you get too deep in it, I will say this.
Go ahead.
The text response that I gave them
Hmm.
probably wasn't real kind.
Well, and it shouldn't have to be. But again, it's one of
Because
the.
I asked them, I said, how many, does she have enough time to make all the whistles blow before the election?
Well, she didn't make enough whistles blow to figure out what the root cause of illegal immigration is.
Well, she wasn't made the czar now. I mean, it seems like I saw that in a House resolution.
Well, but the thing of the matter, oh yes, of course they're trying to remake her and whitewash her. But again, it goes back to some simple things. I'm a simple person. Okay. When we started calling political figures czars, is that not an absolute red flag to everybody? Because where does the term czar come from?
Well, I don't know,
Czars.
but she don't look Russian.
Yeah, well, that's the point. Czars and czarinas were the noble folks in Russia.
Yep.
Okay. And so,
And
I mean, again, it's
them Bolsheviks killed them.
yeah, but I mean, again, the whole thing is they're trying to reimpose this sort of feudal society that has sucked in every implementation of it, because you got a whole lot of serfs and a tiny number of people that are the aristocrats, and the aristocrats are always just absolutely horrible examples of humanity. And
Well,
you
I'm
know,
gonna be honest with you. I
okay,
I understand that she was a lawyer and all this, but then all that stuff comes out about the people that she kept in prison way past the end of their sentencing dates. The
yeah,
evidence that she hid,
hmm
I
yeah.
have no use for.
Well, she was absolutely the one of the slimiest of the slimy. But again, you think about this and you look at it, and if you needed a job done, and you need to build a bridge, or you need to build a business, or you need to,
Hmm.
anything that actually constructs something, are you going to hire a lawyer to do it? Hell no. Because these are the people, this is the thing, and the reason they hate meritocracy so much is because meritocracy takes the people who are most capable and do the best job and elevates them. And none of these people that are politicians have ever done anything other than politics. Well, no, I won't say none, but the
Well, I mean,
vast
there have
majority
been
of them have
some that
not.
have done something, but
Yeah, but very
you're as you're
few.
saying, the vast majority have done nothing but suck off the government tit for
Yeah,
their entire public life or
absolutely.
entire adult life.
Yeah. And so, they have no skills. But I saw something. As a matter of fact, I saw something just the other day. It happened to catch my attention. It was about the cult leaders, like Heaven's Gate and
Hmm.
Jim
Yep.
Jones and
David Koresh.
David Koresh and all of these guys. And they were talking about them. And one of the questions that they asked, these folks all have one skill set in common. It is a common thread among all of them, and that is the ability to convince other people to do stuff that they want them to do, whether it's in their own interests or not. Okay. And I sat and as I was listening to that, I was sitting there thinking, well, that's a politician. That's what
Hmm.
politicians do. They have that skill set to convince people to do things even that are not in their own self interest. Okay. For example, taxes, income tax. Okay. And property tax, being taxed on the things you pay tax when you earn the money because of income tax. Then you pay tax on the goods and services that you buy with that money,
Hmm.
sales tax. Then you also pay for the privilege of owning the stuff that you've already been double taxed for to begin with. Now,
And then you also get taxed when you pass it down to somebody else.
exactly. Okay. Now, but again, that's an example of getting people to do stuff that's not in their own self-interest. But the thing that was really chilling is that universally universally people use this particular power or gift, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
for evil, never for good. It's almost never for the general good. And it's almost always
The
for
detriment of the majority of the rest of the people.
the benefit of the person who has that capability,
Right.
and again,
I will say this: the only good thing that think that came out of the opening ceremony of the Olympics, and I'm not a big Olympic fan. I don't watch it. I could, if it wouldn't hurt my feelings, if they just canceled it.
Mhm.
But it did make me feel good when I saw Celine Dion actually be able to come back and sing after that battle that she's been having with that stiff person syndrome,
Mhm. Mhm.
because
Well,
she
I
still got it, baby.
well, and I'm happy for that. I didn't watch any of that, honestly. I'm neck deep in studying for the instrument pilot rating, and so I don't have time for television. Although I did take a
Well, don't
break.
follow the example that John F. Kennedy Jr. did, because it didn't end well.
Well, I understand. Well, and again, it's one of those things that I mean, first thing I saw this morning on the news was a group of performers that died in a plane crash. But there is, again, this is one of the things I'm extremely careful, because there is absolutely nothing natural about flight for a human being. We don't have
Hmm.
wings. We're not buoyant in air. And so, I mean, everything about it is a very risky procedure. So you have to be extremely meticulous, and you have to know an awful lot of stuff. That's why we don't have flying cars. But that was another
Well, they
conversation.
say now, I read an article somewhere that said that it might be coming to fruition within the next year or two.
There's no way they're going to. That's not. I mean, it may come into fruition, but you're not going to be able to get a flying car without having a pilot's license. It would make the airways so completely unsafe that I mean, again, that was a
Well, I mean, it looked
conversation I
like
was
Coruscant.
having
It's all right. It
with
looked like Coruscant.
with
Everything's all right.
no, it wouldn't be all right, but the I was having that conversation with a friend of mine just the other day as well. Some kid ran into another mutual friend's house with a Yukon, driving it at
Mm,
120 miles an hour, and of course that did
mm.
a bit of damage.
It
And
may have scratched it.
the again, and I was sitting talking to him, and it's like, what amazes me. I mean, we had idiots when we were growing up. I mean, there were some people that were powerful, stupid, but the level of
Well,
stupid.
but the problem is when we had idiots, the level of stupidity was a little bit different because
Oh yeah.
they could only go so far because they still had to say something to your face.
Well, but this is the point. The level of idiots that we got now. I mean, people eating Tide Pods, for God's sake. That was the point where it's like, humanity is just gone completely off the deep end.
Hmm.
And it's absurd that.
It is. I mean, it really is crazy.
Yeah. And what and there was a Dante Gable, who is he's Hispanic and is very popular in amongst the Hispanics. He preaches. He's a preacher, among other things, and
Okay.
a talk show host. But he was talking about the fact that you really have to be taught to be this stupid. You have to be. You're not born this stupid. You have to educate. You have to be educated to become the kind of idiot that we've got running around
Well,
here
and I
these
mean, I
days.
think the reliance on the state and the erasure of self responsibility
Right.
is hand in hand with the people, the way the people act today, because they don't have to be responsible for themselves.
Well, yes, that's exactly the point. Because it starts from the top down. And by the top, I'm talking about the useful idiots. Okay, the people that we see, the useful idiots are the people who are in charge of the government, who are in charge of the media, the people that are narrating the story these days. Because with the rise of the internet, the rise of computers, they've been given tools that allow them to micromanage at a level that humans have never been able to micromanage before.
Yeah, but I think this one latest thing just showed them it don't take but one bit of code and an update to bring that stuff to crashing down.
Well, there's truth to that, but on the other side of the coin, there is, I mean, you remember, or you may not, when during the shelling of Baghdad in the Iraq War, that the computer networks were far, far more resilient than anybody thought that they would
Well,
be.
that's because they were running Windows XP, baby.
Well, there's some truth to that.
It didn't start going downhill till Vista.
Yeah, well, no, it was, yeah, well, I'll keep my comments to myself on all of that. But, yeah, Vista was a
It's kind of that
interesting
reminds
thing.
me of the episode in the IT crowd where Roy and Moss are bunking off and they're coming back from playing in the arcade and they find this robot. Well, it's a bomb deactivation robot that goes around and explodes the bombs.
Hmm.
and it's having problems. And they says like Moss is all excited because he's found this robot, and he's like, "Can we keep it?" And it's like it's not working, it's malfunctioning. What's going on? And they holler back and says, "What operating systems is it running?" And the guy that's controlling it says, "It just updated to Vista." And Moss and Roy look at each other, and Roy says, "We're dead." Great show. If y'all haven't seen it, the IT Crowd, I think
Yeah.
you can get it on Amazon Prime and all the others. I don't do Netflix anymore because of their off the wall political agenda. I don't do a lot of business with any company that if I know they knowingly, I don't think corporations should be in politics, period. And if I find if I'm doing business with a company that does political, either side, donations and activism and stuff like that, I will find a way to get out of doing business with that company.
Well, but that's the problem. All of them do. Every single
Well, not
blessed
all
one
of
of
them.
them.
Not all of them.
Well,
There
I'd
are a
say
few.
that the vast majority of them do. I mean, again, but the problem goes back to a simple one, and we've talked about this before: the monopolies, and having only. Well, I mean, again, for example, we've supposedly got three telecommunications carriers in the United States, but they're in co-opetition, I think is the terminology that they use. So they're in collusion, and they set pricing so that they all make their money and they all do things exactly the same way. And one of them is just as
Hmm.
bad as the other
Oh, they're
because
all just as
they're
bad as
not
the other.
actually in competition with one another. And that's the
No,
truth for the,
because the other ones are just filling in the holes to where the
yeah,
other ones networks don't work.
yeah, exactly. And this is a problem. I mean, again, that's why, for example, the power companies, it used to be a utility. It wasn't individual businesses. And the same with the telephones and all of that stuff. And it should be a utility. Now, there are very few things that I think that the federal government or the state government or the local governments really need to be doing that they're actually doing. But, they do need to maintain a police force. They do need to maintain a fire department. They do need to maintain some public services. I do understand and agree with the regulation of driver's licenses and pilots' licenses and things of that nature. That
Hmm.
all makes sense. Okay. But when we've got the rise of the healthcare monopolies, and I guess you should really call that the rise of the insurance company
Well, I was
monopolies.
going to say it's more of the insurance company than the
Yeah.
healthcare providers.
Yeah, but that's the thing again. So now all of these healthcare providers are beholden to the insurance companies because they got to be paid for the work that they do. And if they want to get paid the big bucks, then they're going to do the procedures and whatnot that the insurance companies will give them
Every
the most
90
money for.
days for as
Yeah,
often as they will do it every 90. That's why people
yeah,
keep earning a constant cycle of going to the doctors. It's
yep,
because the insurance company will pay for it
yep,
every
absolutely.
90 days. So that's when most of the time, most people in this country go to the doctor or have a recurring appointments every 90 days because that's how often the insurance company will pay for it.
Yep, absolutely. And that's the kind of stuff that was it Truman? Wait a minute, it wasn't Truman. Who was it? Oh, Teapot Dome scandal. I cannot
You
bring his
bringing,
name back.
you're going way back then, boy.
Yeah, the whole monopolies when all of that stuff came up.
Now,
My
that
goodness,
was way before Truman, wasn't it?
yeah, it was way before Truman, and I
That was
cannot remember his name,
that
but
was Warren G. Harding.
Harding. Yeah, and of course the Teapot Dome scandal undid a significant, undid all of the good that Warren Harding had done
Hmm.
in in stopping monopoly practices. Because I mean, again, the bottom line is when a monopoly takes over, then they become the controlling factor in
Right,
that entire
most
industry.
definitely.
So
Well, because they don't only control the outlet to sell or provide the product, most times they also control the supplyment of the
Absolutely.
materials to make it.
Well, and again, that's Nintendo did that when they were one of the ones that they artificially kept demand high by restricting the supply. And I mean, the laws of
Well, I
supply
think
and demand
PlayStation's
exist.
done that. I think
Oh, they've all
PlayStation's
done it since
done
then.
that
Yeah.
before too.
Yeah. They've all followed that same model. If you artificially restrict the supply, then you can keep your demand higher. And and that's the whole thing about competition, because then if somebody artificially restricts the supply, somebody else can come in there and go, hey, here's a supply, and
Right.
they
Or
can
here's
reap
an
those
alternative
benefits.
that does the same thing
Exactly.
just as good or if not better.
Exactly. But I got to tell you, I did watch a movie that I highly recommend. I don't know if you're a
Uh-oh.
fan of the remakes of the Planet of the Apes or not. Are you a fan of
Uh,
those?
it, it, mm, I've I have briefly watched a couple of them. I think it was the first one
Not the
with the
Marky Mark,
chimpanzee.
not the Mark Wahlberg one. That one was it was an action flick, and it was okay, but it was not. I'm talking about from Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War for
No,
the
I have
Planet of
not
the Apes.
seen any of those.
Okay, I highly recommend that you watch
Dude,
Rise of
I
the
live
Planet
in
of
the
the
Planet
Apes.
of the Apes. Have you seen my wife?
I'm not going to talk about that now. So, but you need to watch Rise of the Planet of the Apes,
Okay.
because that particular remake with James Franco, I think they did an excellent, very intelligent, well written script, very well executed, and I think you'll
Well,
enjoy
the
it.
original, originally it was movies and a TV show, wasn't it?
No, well, yeah, there were originally the
Like in the
Charlton Heston,
60s.
the Charlton Heston movie, and again, that was
Well, I mean,
right.
that was so well done for the time back
Oh yeah,
then.
absolutely. For the time, it was amazing, and
Oh
you
yeah.
realize that the virus that in that series, in the '60s series, that created the intelligent speaking apes and wiped out mankind, happened in 1992.
Well,
I think that was the Clinton
the kids
administration.
getting born around in there, that was when they started getting stupid.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. But no, I highly recommend, because I watched the most recent one, which was Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes,
Uh-huh.
and I thoroughly, the thing that I enjoyed so much about that is they now, and we actually know from our studies of primates that primates really are, as the chimpanzees, gorillas, and whatnot in their societies, they're every bit as uh, what's the word I'm looking for? They have all of the same bad tendencies that human beings have now, but of course they're portrayed as an idyllic uh, species in living in harmony with nature and everything like that. But I you know it all boils down to, again, this concept that I developed watching the thing about the cults and the cult leaders. You know, we got to have enough common sense to recognize when we're doing things that are not in our self interest. Now, and
Hmm.
I think there's enough, or not. I don't think there's enough people that realize it and are willing to do something about it. And that's the problem. Okay, because we all realize the things that we're doing that are not to our benefit, and yet we continue to allow them to be done, and
Right.
we continue to allow people that are, I mean, again, another one of the phrases I've said many times: the wolf would not be nearly as nearly as powerful if he didn't have accomplices among the sheep.
Right.
Okay, and we continue to allow the accomplices among the sheep to do their thing. Okay. And I mean, again, this is, all right. Here's a great example. Okay. So the Palestinian protesters that stormed the Capitol, burned American flags and all of that stuff
Hmm.
when Netanyahu was
Was that
visiting the White
technically
House.
not an insurrection? Because
Right.
wasn't that even worse than what they did on January the 6th?
Oh yes, there were more officers that were injured by
Yeah.
physically injured by the quote unquote protesters and everything else. They were all released within an hour after their arrest. Because that wasn't an insurrection. That, everybody, I mean, anybody that looks at that would have to say, well, that was a hell of a lot worse than
Right.
what happened when
Well,
the
not
people,
according to the media.
right, according to the media, because again, according to the media, the right wing conservatives are the biggest danger to the entire world. Right wing conservatives don't riot. Right wing conservatives typically don't take violence. That's always the left leaning that always
Hmm.
take, that resort to violence. And, they're also the ones that are always saying, well, the ends justify the means. We're standing on the side of correctness and all that stuff. And it's,
Well, if standing on the side of correctness is that fat cow sitting in the middle in Jesus' spot in that Last Supper in France,
yeah,
I don't want to be correct, because I'm going to tell you one thing. They're lucky lightning didn't come down from the heavens and toast them there.
yeah, I know. And it's
Maybe,
honestly
maybe
kind of
that,
sad
maybe
that it
that
didn't.
is part of the problem, because Christians and right wing people tend not to do stuff like that. Maybe if we decided to stand up and just pummel the shit out of them, they'd quit doing some of this stupid stuff.
Well, that's kind of the thing. Spare the rod and spoil the child. And we've got to, we're kind of treating these people with participation trophies and stuff like that and tell them, yeah,
And we're
no,
still forced to be a participant in their mental illness.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we should not be allowing that. But, again, I've said many times, this
And then,
stuff's
of
going to get a
course, we
lot
have,
worse before it gets any
well,
better.
I don't know if it can get any worse. It's pretty bad now.
Don't say that. My goodness. Don't beg
Well,
that.
but now we got Joe Biden, wants a constitutional amendment
Mm-mm.
to redo the Supreme Court.
Oh, of course.
Well, it ain't gonna happen. It ain't even gonna get out of Congress. The Republicans control the Congress. This
Well,
is nothing but showboating.
he's not technically the president anymore. He abdicated the roles of the executive office to the Department of the Interior and to the Department of
Justice.
not the Department of Justice. Maybe he did some of them to the Department of Justice, but finance. Janet Yellen, what is she the minister of?
Secretary of the Treasury.
Secretary of the Treasury. Yes, yeah. So the Secretary of the Treasury, so the Treasury Department and the Department of the Interior. I know he did those, but it's of course unconstitutional for him to do so. But he did it through, I want to say, Executive Order 4418 or something like that. My memory's a
Mm-hmm.
little lapsed, a little bit shy on that because I didn't write it down. But yeah, he did that. So again, he's not, well, he never was anything more than a
The
figurehead.
meme I've been seeing going around is pretty much got Obama sitting there, and it said, no matter what dummy the ventriloquist used, it's still the
Yeah.
same person.
Well, and again, this is the thing. So this is the same thing that's going on in France. France's biggest problem right now is they've got so many um, foreign, they're invaders.
Right.
And this is the same thing,
And well,
they're
this is the
illegal
path
immigrants.
this is what we have to look forward
Oh
to.
yeah, no, absolutely. This is the goal. And that's exactly what ended the Holy Roman Empire was illegal immigration. And they wound up with some, and what they were doing is that the citizenry, there were a lot of jobs the citizenry didn't want to do, garbage collecting, stuff like that. And so they bring in they brought in slaves and everything like that. And they got to the point where they outnumbered the citizenry to the point where they just basically took the whole thing over.
Hmm.
And Rome, the Holy Roman Empire, died with a whimper, not with a roar. And
Well, that's kind of how we're going out.
oh, it is absolutely how we're going out because we're allowing it to happen. And I personally don't know how to stem the tide because you can't fix stupid, and there's so much stupid
No, and
out
you
there that's
can't kill it
insane.
because if you kill it, you end up going to prison. But some of them are. I'll tell you one thing: seeing some of this stuff that's going on, and this comment here, is probably going to piss some people off. But if seeing the stuff that went on at the opening games in Paris and seeing the continued way in which some people act and the way they do and all of this, particularly with Kamala Harris and some of these other ones, Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, all of those, they are prime examples of people that should have been swallowed by their mamas, and a prime example of why there should be better birth control or abortion should be allowed.
Well, unfortunately, it's hard to cull those after the fact.
Well, you know, I thought so too until I watched the Hunger Games, and I'm sitting here thinking, it don't seem that bad after all.
You're gonna you're gonna have to elaborate on that to me a little bit. I'm afraid
Well,
I
they
don't
put
follow your
everybody
logic.
out there, and you run out there, and if you win, that means you kill the other people.
Yeah, well, I mean that's kind of a, I mean that's a relatively
Survival of the
brutal way of
fittest.
looking
And I'm
at it.
gonna tell you one thing: there ain't none of them in that politician class.
No, they wouldn't make it. No.
No, they wouldn't last 30 minutes in the real world.
Well,
And I'm
no.
gonna be another thing. I understand there's a lot of excitement and stuff around JD Vance and
Mhm.
Trump naming him as his running mate, but I am not really all that impressed with JD Vance.
Why not, pray tell?
Well, because you spend months and months and months and years denigrating Donald Trump, telling him he's a antichrist and evil and all of this, and now all of a sudden you and your wife at one point hated him, but now you love him and are doing everything you can do to get him elected. It seems a bit hypocritical to me.
Well, if you try to take all the hypocrisy out of politics, you best pack a
We would be a
lunch.
lot better off.
We would be a lot better off. But the first thing you got to do to get rid of hypocrisy is you got to get rid of the money that funds it, because hypocrisy is something that's that's it's something that you have to strive to overcome because it's human nature. Okay. um, you know, to want to not be accountable for something that you've done, or that well, I don't guess that's really
Well,
hypocrisy,
and I'm
but
just saying this is Joe Biden wants a constitutional amendment to redo the Supreme Court. If there are term limits imposed on the Supreme Court, then you might as well go ahead and throw in the term limits for Congress and the Senate, because they're right up there with enough to be people are pissed off about. I think one term or two terms in the Senate, 2 to 3 terms in the House, and you're done. You can't run from the House to the Senate, and if you was a senator, you can't run for the House.
well, and again, that's something that
And you
we the
don't get
people,
lifetime retirement. You don't
right?
get lifetime health care. You don't get a check from now to the end of time.
Well, and I think that that's correct, and I think we should do that, and we can do that as the citizenry. But we got to start with our local politicians and then fix it with our state politicians, and then we can have a constitutional convention, or actually it's
Well, for
two
some
thirds of the
reason,
states.
I have a feeling if people got together to have a convention of the states, they would find some way to say that it was an insurrection and it wasn't legal, and we'd all get arrested and hung for treason or some crap like that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, when the Tea Party arose it scared Obama enough that he sicked the IRS on him. You remember that?
Oh yeah.
So now he got pulled back on that because that was a bridge too far. But that's the problem. Now they've got so
Not
many of
you
these.
don't mean precious little Barack
Yep.
would do something that wasn't constitutional. Man ain't never had a real job day in his life.
Well, they're still claim, the left still claims that his administration had no um, what's the word? It starts with a C and it just went out of my head. What is wrong with me tonight? My thesaurus is not working.
Uh-oh.
But that he had no, that it was corruption free and there were no scandals.
What
That was it. There were no
scandals?
scandals.
Yeah.
I mean, there were tons of scandals during the
Well, one of the biggest
his
ones I can
administration.
think of is the Fast and the Furious.
Yep, the Fast and the Furious was a big one. But I mean, again, it's all that same bunch of nonsense of don't believe your lying eyes. Listen to what we're telling you because this is what we want you to believe. So, I mean,
I
again,
think one of the next ones would have been if you like your doctor, you can keep them.
yep, absolutely. The Unaffordable Care Act. And of course,
Yep,
the website that crashed
dude.
epically the minute that they launched it. All that
They
money.
spent $4 billion
Yep,
on a website that a first year web design student could have built
yep,
in the classroom for $75.
yep, and it wouldn't have crashed.
Yeah,
Yep, but I
it's
mean,
just
well, no, it should be unbelievable, but unfortunately, we've seen it too many times. I mean, again, it's nothing new because it goes back all the way to what you remember the Heidi Fleiss and the Mustang Ranch and all of that stuff.
oh yeah.
Where when they had the Mustang Ranch under investigation, the federal government was responsible for maintaining the operation while the investigation was being maintained, and they successfully managed to bankrupt the whorehouse. So
Which is an interesting feat.
it's an amazing feat, and these are the same people that we for some reason trust to run the economy of the United States, and we think that they have some idea of what they're doing. Well, they actually do have an idea of what they're doing. What they're doing is they're making themselves fabulously wealthy off of the backs of the citizenry of the United States. So,
Well, I'm at the point now. Well, I don't consider myself an American. I've told this before.
all right.
I consider myself, well, I mean, I always have.
Well,
It's the
yeah,
way our
you're talking
founding
about
fathers
being in
saw it.
that.
I consider myself a North Carolinian. The American
Sure.
part of it, I don't give two hoots and a hoonanny for it because it does nothing for me. The idea of the American thing does nothing but cost me money.
Yeah, that's the truth.
We continue to send money to Ukraine, and then we just found out the Pentagon sent over $6 billion extra to Ukraine that they didn't even know that they sent them.
Oh, Lord, no, I didn't know
Well,
that.
the funny thing is the last time the Pentagon lost a bunch of money and couldn't account for it, you know what happened, don't you?
Well, please elaborate.
It was in 9/11. The day before, there was a news conference with Donald Rumsfeld saying they had lost track of $200 billion. The next
Oh,
day, a
yeah.
freaking plane hits the building in the exact spot where those records are kept.
Yep, yep, yep.
Come
I
on
remember
now.
that now. Yep, I remember that.
Come on.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not big into conspiracy theories, and I'm not saying that 9/11 didn't happen, but I will say this. The only part of 9/11 that I'm suspicious about is the one that hit the Pentagon.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I'm suspicious of all of them because
Because I'm
those.
gonna tell you, I've been to DC, and even then, there ain't many places you could go that is not covered with video surveillance, and there is not one iota of video surveillance showing an airplane hitting the Pentagon.
Well, yeah, but there is one showing what looks like a guided missile, but it was
Right.
scrubbed almost instantly, and it's hard to find. But again, the whole
And
thing.
it hits right at the exact point where those records are kept.
Oh, oh,
And the
absolutely.
military personnel who are used to combat, who were coming out of this gaping hole in the building,
Mhm.
see no airplane parts,
Right.
see no airplane whatsoever. and we're supposed to believe that miraculously some idiot that drinks camel piss from the Middle East can fly an airplane better than the best pilots in the Air Force and in the commercial pilot world, because not one commercial pilot could recreate, or military pilot could recreate, the job of going down the flight path of that airplane and flying into the Pentagon.
Well, that's true. And no, but again, they're and the problem with the conspiracy theories is that most of them have turned out to be true, and you have to, we've run out of conspiracy theories. But again, the term conspiracy theory was coined when people questioned the magic bullet theory with the Kennedy assassination. That's where it came
And
from.
that was miraculously brought forward by Arlen Specter, a Democrat from Pennsylvania.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, you done got my dander up now. I'm going to need some Paul Rocher.
I didn't get your dander up. I was trying to talk about Planet of the Apes. I was doing my best. It's a good movie. I highly recommend it, but you can't really see the latest one unless you've seen The Rise of the
So
Planet of the
they
Apes.
kind of build on each other.
Well, you don't really. I mean, you can watch the first. Now, all four of them, I think, were excellent, very well done, very well acted movies. The CGI is fabulous, in my opinion. But you really only need Rise of the Planet of the Apes
Okay. Well,
to
I will actually
understand the
put
rest
that
of it.
on my list, and I will probably watch that when we conclude this episode.
Well, you should. And now again, it's
But I'm gonna be drunk when I'm watching it, because I don't start watching TV till about half a bottle in.
that won't hurt it at all. I promise
Even
you.
better.
It'll be even better. But yeah, so the first one sets the stage and you understand what's going on. Now the next one, Dawn, and then the one after that, War, for Planet of the Apes,
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of sum that up in things started out when, getting bad for humanity when we created the the talking apes, and then they got worse,
Well, I
significantly
mean,
worse.
the lesson from the movie is don't teach apes to talk, dumbasses.
Well, I don't think it's a problem to teach apes to talk. I mean, again, we'd probably do a heck of a lot better having a bunch of chimpanzees in Congress than we got with the representatives and senators that we have now.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So.
And with that, that's the snout to the curly tail and everything in between. And if you're in France, be ashamed, because y'all people on God's list, and y'all done naughty, and y'all need to repent, because y'all some dirty. And we gone.
Have a good night.
All right, you crazy bunch of motherfuckers. Wait, can we say mother? Anyway, you've been listening to the Carolina Underground. It isn't politically correct, it's just correct. Our motto is, if you can't go balls deep, don't go at all. Actually, that's not our motto, and I'm sorry, I don't even know what that meant. All right, we gotta go. We hope you enjoyed the show. And if you didn't, we hope it really pissed you off. Follow us on Twitter at Carolina UNDGRND Underground, get it? Or drop us an email at Carolina UNDGRND, get it? At northstate.net. We want to hear from you. Y'all be cool. See you next time on Carolina Underground.